lecture, we are going to see what it means to manage conflicts within an organization. A conflict can be defined as the behavior between two or more people proposing alternatives that can clash each other, partially or completely. But which are the main causes of conflicts in organization? We could mention 4 main causes of conflicts. Let's start with the first one, goals breakdown. Each strategic decision taken by the board of directors needs to be deployed in sub-decisions per single unit or function, along all the organizational layers. In fact, the board of directors needs to assure that decisions taken by each organizational function are consistent with the long-term strategic decision. As a matter of fact, this process is managed in a totally rational way, but sometimes some conflicts might occur. Let's try to use an example to show this phenomenon. The board of directors has a clear and quite expectable goal: increasing company profit. The board of directors should obtain this final goal through decisions taken by single unit, and so allocate goals considering that profit is the difference between revenue and overall company costs. To achieve this goal, general managers are asking to sales manager to increase revenue and to production manager to reduce production cost. This choice is not unexpected and totally inconsistent with the final purpose. Sales manager thinks that the best way to increase revenue is to steal customers to competitors through a wider product offering. Thereby, the sales manager is willing to achieve his personal objective by enlarging the product range through the introduction of new product variants. On the other hand, production manager thinks that one of major costs under his personal control pertains to setup costs. Thereby, production manager is willing to reduce setup costs through a production by bigger lots. In order to achieve this goal without having huge stock, it is necessary to reduce the number of product variants, thus exploiting economies of scale. And then you might have a conflict. This is the typical situation that might happen between functions inside a company. Each function is locally optimizing its personal performance and goals, but this local optimization creates some mismatch and so conflicts. The second cause of conflict pertains to differentiation. Organizational units are likely to differ each other in terms of values, approaches and standards, and the differences might create conflicts. For example, in a clothing company, stylists compared to production people have totally different approaches. The former is very interested in the trends and fashion opportunities, don't want to have any ties, and is more interested in the visual representation of the final product rather than in costs of the product itself. The latter is pushed by costs and deadline, and so the main focus is in assuring that the products on time within cost constraints. The two approaches might strongly differ each other, with potential areas of conflicts among units, although the final purpose is always the same: to launch the best product on the market. The third cause of conflict is related to access to limited resources. Life in companies would be much easier if managers could work with infinite resources. You could realize all the projects that you think are strategic, you could hire all the people needed to perform your task, you could also have the best quality of each company without any time constraints. However, situation just described simply does not exist in reality. In real firms, managers are competing to have the best resources to achieve unit goals. These resources might be technological resources, financial resources, or human resources, of course. For example, a manufacturing company might have an annual budget for technological investment, and so it is necessary to decide whether to launch a new e-commerce portal, to renovate the production machinery, or to streamline internal processes through digital technology. Budget is not sufficient to realize all these great projects, and this might create conflict. In consultancy company, the conflict between partners to have the best resources to their project is very likely. Each partner wants the best people, and so this might create conflicts. Finally, Last cause of conflict pertains to task interdependence and resource sharing. You might have noticed that it is much more likely to have conflicts between people working in the same team or in the same project. This happens because activities realized by different people or different units are interconnected each other, and results of one unit are strictly related to the results of the other units. So, if demand planners want to deliver their forecasts on time, they might need the sales data by the commercial department. Until the commercial department has not finalized this data, they cannot proceed, and this might create a conflict as well. You could imagine that several of these causes are actually quite typical of working life, and so very likely to happen in normal working routine. In this case, question might be how to avoid that conflicts happen, but it is also most important to ask ourselves, if conflicts would occur, how could we solve them? This is not a unique answer, but it depends on two main variables: speed necessary to solve the conflicts on the basis of the available time, and level of consensus you are willing to obtain into the organization. As a matter of fact, negotiation is a typical way to solve conflicts and try to find an agreement among parties. In this way, decision maker is using the politics, assuring that all the organization is in the same boat, but making all parties aware of the agreement takes time. On the other hand, people could use their hierarchical role to solve the conflict. Said in other words, the boss is deciding. In this way, decision maker is using the power, assuring that the decision is taken quite quickly, although in this case it might happen that someone is not happy of the final decision. As this example suggests, speed and consensus are typically in trade-off each other, and decision makers should use the right combination of power and politics. Actually, there are people able to manage the trade-off moving forward this boundary. This is achieved through leadership. A leader is someone able to take decisions that are shared among all the organizations, and people would follow leaders because they trust them. In this way, thanks to their personal attitude, leaders are able to take quick decisions with a good level of consensus of the organization.